This program is brought to you by Emory University.
On January 21st, 2015, the Office of the Provost at Emory University hosted a forum titled The Value of Public Scholarship. The panelists examined the impact of public scholarship on those who practice it and on their institutions. The speakers were Claire Sterk, Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at Emory, Andra Gillespie, Associate Professor of Political Science at Emory, Carlos Marino, Associate Professor of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine at the Emory School of Medicine, and Megan McRaney, Assistant Director of Media Relations at Emory. In this video, Provost Sterk discusses the many benefits that public scholarship bestows on major research universities.
Let me just begin by saying that I very strongly believe that no research university in the 21st century can take itself seriously if there's not a real appreciation for public scholarship. It's just a fact, and we could debate that, which then would not make it a fact, but I believe that all the evidence points in the direction that in order to really be the kind of place we strive to be, we must have public scholarship. We must have the kind of partnerships. We must be willing to take the knowledge that we have and make it available to a broader audience. We must take a lot of the things that are at the core of the liberal arts and practice those and ourselves to really think critically, communicate with people, make sure that other people understand why we're asking the questions that we're asking, how we come up with the answers that we have. In many ways, what we do through that is we really contribute to the public good. And I know that none of us probably every day go back to the website and look up what the Emory mission and vision statement are, but a very core of what we stand for is contributing to the public good. And so it seems that on the one hand, there is a movement that makes us believe that public scholarship is new, and at the same time, it seems that it has been part of the academy for such a long time already. And we should be proud of the fact that we not only talk about what we're going to do moving forward, but how much public scholarship already has taken place before we called it public scholarship. And if you go around and you talk with faculty colleagues, you'll hear that people will say, well, I always used to do that, but it was called service. And so we've, in many ways, come a long way. I also believe we still have to go a long way. And later on, I'll share a few thoughts with you about how I think this comes into play when we talk about promotion and tenure. It's extremely important, again, that we not only discover, we talk about knowledge generation at the university, we talk about discovery, but what is it all worth, right, if it sort of stays in this small group of people that get to be part of an academic community. And it's quite interesting that as technology has advanced, we actually now have more opportunities than ever to engage in public scholarship. It used to be that people would think about public scholarship as you worked with the community. You had partners in the world outside of the academy that you were working with. Now there's so many other ways in which we can express our voices, but we want to do that in respectful ways, and we want to do it in ways that sometimes actually create some conflict, right, some cognitive dissonance. We want people to think with us. And we don't want to claim just that because we have come up with an idea driven by a scholarly interest and based on a scholarly foundation, that needs to be what the rest of the world needs to believe. So it's going to require that we communicate in very different ways. I know that Pamela is heading out to a class. It probably also means that as we teach, we need to get our students to think about how they contribute to public scholarship, through the work that they do. I'd like to sort of shift gears a little bit and talk about the fact that I feel, and hopefully other people will be going like, no, Claire, that's no longer the case, that public scholarship still is not valued for what it stands for. That it reminds me a little bit, being a social scientist, of the debate between quantitative and qualitative methods in the social sciences, where if you do advanced statistics, you're really smart. And if you do great qualitative research and you have wonderful narratives, it's anecdotes. And you find a little bit of that parallel when you think about public scholarship. You know, if it goes in a peer-reviewed journal that has been reviewed by the experts, that gives you an H index that is fantastic, it must be better than if it's a piece that goes into public media and it's read by thousands of people that might generate debate. We need to sort of get over that. And the academy, as we all know, tends to move quite slowly, and I believe that if anything can come out of these panels, it's sort of understanding the value of public scholarship. The reality is that, and I hope that you will hear that as the other panelists go through, that you cannot be a really good public scholar if it's not grounded in theory, if it's not methodologically sound, if it's not based on critical analysis and critical thinking. So let's get real about that and sort of move away from the notion that because it's public, it's not as good. I actually would make the argument the other way around and say because it's public scholarship, it actually has more impact in many ways than if we just keep it in our own little circus. Many of us are aware of the Public Scholars Initiative that Emory has engaged. I just have to say I'm really excited that I believe we are at a place where peers can start training peers, where we need to sort of think about diffusion, get that model out. And what my hope really would be is that public scholarships becomes an integral part of the Emory culture. That it's not something where people either have to be defensive about or insecure about, but it's just part of what Emory stands for. I think we do that in many areas, but again, my sample is very biased. Very often when I talk with faculty, I still find myself sort of having to defend that public scholarship actually is really important. So if it really can become part of our culture by contributing to public policy, service learning, community engagement, public debates, then I think we're really doing what it is that as a university we are expected to do. I was going to share an example, I'll do it really fast just for the sake of time, that talks a little bit about some of my experiences as a scholar. You heard that one of my areas of scholarly interest is addiction, and that's probably an area that's real easy to translate to public scholarship because you can be almost anywhere, be it at a party, at the grocery store, or anywhere else. The topic of addiction seems to come up in many ways. And I participated on a panel that was supposed to bring the academic community, the scholarly community, and the policy community together. So among the panelists was somebody who was an expert on substance abuse treatment, somebody who was an expert on policies, somebody who worked for the drug court, and me. And as we were setting up, I indicated that I had invited a fifth panel member to join the panel, which I knew wasn't maybe quite the right way to do it, but I was afraid that if I would ask in advance, it would not happen. And so I even said, I'll share my time on this panel with somebody who is an addict, because that's the one perspective that we don't have. And it just totally changed the whole dynamic of the conversations that took place, and it gave sort of a whole other meaning to public scholarship. It really brings it even more closely to the people that we actually very often talk and write about. Let me shift gears again and just say a few things about tenure here. And I've been asked to comment on that on numerous occasions. You already heard that I said that I would wish for Emory to be able to very seriously claim that public scholarship is part of our culture. It can only be part of our culture if we also then recognize it in tenure. If we move away from thinking about public scholarship as service, if we move away from the connotation that public scholarship is flaky, it's not serious, because it is, and if we can get around the anxiety that this is also part of what we need to do. We live in a culture where the best judgment always is expected to come from the experts, right? That's why we talk about peer review. Well, at some point in time, that's going to result in some group thinking, same thinking, and it's not going to recognize how the rest of the world might look at it. There are lots of situations, and I will spare you going through my long list, of where there has been excellent scholarship from an academic perspective that has had unanticipated negative consequences. Had it been public scholarship or a mix of the two, the outcome might have been very different. And I'll let you think about examples what that could be. I do think that if we could get to the point, and we are in a good place right now because we have a very active university faculty council that's also having conversations about promotion and tenure. If we get to a point where there could be collective agreement that Emory, and we wouldn't be the first, by the way, in its promotion and tenure standards would include public scholarship as a domain to look at. If I could have my way, I actually would not just have it be included. I would have it have its own separate category. And then I would like to push it even a little bit more, which is one of the things that I guess I'd like to do in life. I would say, if we're serious about it, then what questions do we need to ask? And I believe one of the questions we need to ask is, who become the reviewers? Can we be comfortable, somebody who is not a peer in the traditional sense, be a reviewer of the materials that there are? And where I've run into, just having talked informally with people about this, is that people faculty colleagues get very excited at Emory and elsewhere when you talk about this. They go like, yeah, we really need to have this in promotion and tenure. And then you start talking about, well, who should the reviewers be? Could we think about that a little bit more broadly? And people go, well, we have to think about that. So I do think that even if it becomes an integral part of our promotion and tenure standards, we need to be comfortable with expanding what peer review really means. Because if we make the public part of the peer group, then we need to figure out a way to bring that in. Let me just close by saying that if we do get to the point of taking public scholarship seriously, there are two other things I just like to mention, and then I'll stop. One is, I hope that we can move away from just thinking about public scholarship as something that people can do who are more advanced in their career. And you hear it over and over again. I want to do public scholarship. I have been advised, or I have decided to not do it until I have tenure. That means that we're excluding a whole group of people from really being involved in public scholarship. The other is that we really need to get to a place where we can have mentoring in place so that people don't drift in one direction or the other. So I've seen now in a number of instances where people have shifted, started including public scholarship as part of their portfolio. And the excitement of public scholarship is different than the excitement of traditional scholarship, and got so drawn in the excitement that public scholarship generates that they became fully public scholars. And that's not good either. So we need to help each other understand, have a better balance.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.